So welcome to episode 5. Are we on episode 5? That's such a lie. Welcome to episode 6 of 100 Days In, series 4 with me, Will Hall. This is the podcast where we deep dive into the first 100 days of a company, narrated by the founder themselves. So this week I speak with Marietta Hickman, the founder of Cheeky Nibble. I think rarely have I had a guest on that's so articulate and compelling in what they say. She's very thoughtful about her answers. I think she narrates how she started the business just so well. Marietta doesn't do Cheeky Nibble full time. She has a full-time job outside of that, which means that, you know, when you have really bad weeks, that's kind of balanced out because the business balances out with her job and then vice versa. She's very honest about that, and I think she gives a really good blueprint about how she started the company, all the way down to sourcing suppliers, sourcing equipment to be able to actually create the product. Yeah, I thought just really well summarized, really well put, and a really thoughtful hour conversation. So without further ado, that's it for me. Let's get on with it. Roll the credit.
The best conversations come to reaching out to people that you think might be like-minded, even if they're at different stages in their career to you. I did fear failure a lot. I still do. So product uniqueness is important, but actually you can have an amazing product, but if you don't try and sell it through your messaging, it's like you're wasting your time. And a lot of people reach out to me wanting to start their own businesses, but they're like, oh, I'm worried, I want to start my own fashion brand, but what will my friends from fashion college think? It's like, don't tell them. You don't need to announce it. It's no one's business.
Marietta, thank you very much for joining me. I think since our conversation a few weeks ago now, I've been thinking about your business a bit, actually. I know you've been on quite a journey since we spoke, but I want to just take it back to right to the beginning, because I know it isn't just something where you reach a certain age and then start a business from a whim. There's often components in your life beforehand that lead up to that event. So I was just wondering, would you just mind sharing a bit about your background, upbringing, and then, the components and factors that led you to starting Cheeky Nibble?
No one in my family, is kind of an entrepreneur, has created a brand. So that's kind of quite random. I wasn't I looked up to somebody that I knew and was inspired to be an entrepreneur. I think that my degree originally was in sort of media communications. I was always loved the power of branding, marketing, being able to create something, from scratch and, fulfilling a need, being able to connect with people through a product or an idea. Always loved that. It's hence why I did a degree in communications. My first job out of uni was basically working for a cosmetics manufacturer, helping them create brands. I actually was on holiday in Germany whilst I was still studying. And I interviewed this man who worked for this cosmetics manufacturer. His name's Randolph. He's amazing. And just to ask him about how do you build brands? How do you build cosmetic brands? And he offered me a job during my interview because I was interviewing him for my dissertation. And then a week later, I flew out to Germany and I was working there full time and finished my degree remotely. So I kind of got thrown into the business side of building brands straight out of uni. And I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot, especially a manufacturing side of building brands. But I think the more I did it, the more I just felt like this is something I'd like to do on my own. I kind of wanted to learn all aspects of the business, and just focusing on one small side of the manufacturing felt like I wasn't learning everything I wanted to. They were really supportive, but I think also part of it was during the pandemic and I kind of wanted to go home and it was quite lonely being in Germany. I don't speak any German. So when I decided to move back to the UK, I kind of thought, I've saved a lot of money because I was paid very well, and I didn't spend any money because I was in lockdown. Why don't I start my own business instead of looking for a job straight away? Or I not invest in this belief? I just felt like I wanted to build my own brand, but I wasn't sure what. And I did think about cosmetics. I thought about fitness. I thought about all the industries I'm interested in. But I was already making this allergen-free granola for myself because I have to do a lot of exercise for my mental health. And I was making this snackable granola to eat. and it was already allergen free because of family members with allergies. And I was like, you know what, like I have to make this stuff because I can't find it anywhere. And I thought, you know, like instead of like killing myself trying to create a brand, why don't I've already got something that I think there's a demand for because I have a demand for it. And I did a little bit more research, and I say a little bit, I did hours and hours of research because I love research. And I really thought that not only was there a gap in the market, but there was a gap that needed to be filled. There would be demand there from what I kind of discovered through, researching cereal trends and the market in general. So that's kind of how Cheeky Nibble was born. A little bit of a business brain, and then also something that I was making already.
Yeah, I can see the story forming already. So during your dissertation, you interviewed someone that owned a company. They were based in Germany, and then they hired
Not
you.
owned, he worked for a company, but he was quite senior in it. Yeah, he ran like some of the factory sites.
And what I'm trying to deduce, because say for example, he spoke to 10 people that were doing the dissertation. I don't think he would have just hired every single person that spoke to him. So what do you think it was about your interaction that led to him to want to hire you?
I don't know. I think obviously I was interviewing him for my dissertation, which was going to support my research on how to market like a gender neutral skincare brand. That's what my dissertation was on. And I think it must have just been a topic that he and his business in general were interested in learning more on. So I think maybe I was just I was someone that happened to be thinking something he was thinking. We connected in that way. We stayed in touch. I think he saw a lot of himself in me, slightly more out of the box thinking. Also, I don't know how many people, like, I reached out to him to speak to him. You know, I think it was kind of random that I would even try to speak to him. I don't know how many people have tried to. So I think there was a bit of kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Confidence, but also I was so interested in what he did. And I think that not everyone is so interested in what someone's doing, and it's kind of complimentary when someone's really I was asking him so many questions, and then he kept asking me questions. I was like, who's interviewing who? Like, what's going on? But yeah, I think it was just a sort of shared mindset, shared entrepreneurial spirit, because even though he worked for a company, he was very entrepreneurial himself. Well, he still is.
So yeah, throughout the episodes and the previous ones I've had, I was trying to deduce the takeaways for people listening. But there's already one there already, because when the fact you reached out to someone and were just hugely interested in what they were doing, they agreed to meet you. You asked great questions. They were asking questions back. I suppose it just shows that, okay, it's not going to be a yes every single time, but if you're interested in a particular area, sector, industry, you could just find influential people within that and reach out to them, even if you haven't started a business and you were just inquisitive. And people like talking about their area.
I think there's something that people value authenticity, because I think it's something that not many of us realize that we don't experience very often, you know, especially when you work in big companies. You know, you have to get the job done. There's a lot of, like feigned interest. I think if you are completely new, you want to start your own business, and you reach out to someone that has established business or something like that, and you're so genuinely interested and authentic, and you're not expecting anything, because why would you? You know, like I didn't expect anything. I was still studying. I was on holiday in Germany, realized there was this guy, decided to reach out. Like, I had no intention of moving to Germany. I don't even speak German. So it was definitely not my intention to get a job out of it. I just thought this is someone I could learn a lot from. And if he could spare me a 5-minute call, let alone an in-person meeting, I would take it. And I think the best conversations come to reaching out to people that you think might be like-minded, even if they're at different stages in their career to you. You can learn so much. And I think like recognizes like sometimes.
Yeah, it's an important step, and it certainly set you on a trajectory. You mentioned branding, and you like brands, you want to build a brand. Where do you think that comes from? Is that just something you've always felt, something you've been interested in all your life, or was there a particular spark at some point that led you there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the brand thing, because I've seen in manufacturing that branding really is everything. Sometimes the products are almost all the same, and what's different is the branding. And that's not because the product doesn't have value. Like I do think Cheeky Nibble is a unique product, for example, in itself. I mean, there's no other allergen-free, top 14 allergen-free granola in the UK at the moment because it's very difficult to make an allergen-free product and the nut-free sites are rare. So like product uniqueness is important, but actually you can have an amazing product, but if you don't try and sell it through your messaging, it's like you're wasting your time. And actually, I've seen more instances where the brand is what makes it successful, not the product. Versus like I've tried products that are better than other products, but one is successful, and that's because someone's invested time in branding. So it's kind of, it might seem superficial, but it would be naive to think that branding wasn't important. It time and time again that we see it is. And I also feel sometimes that it gets a bad rep, thinking like talking about like brand and marketing and selling stuff is like kind of, yeah, being superficial is seen as like a negative thing. Whereas actually being able to convey a story and connect with people just through messaging, I think is amazing. It's so powerful. And branding can make you happy. Like the amount of people who write to me saying that the brand, just like the pictures on my box make them smile. Like, how is that a bad thing? Why can't you like get joy out of things just from the way they look or the way they make you feel or the messaging and how it connects to you? I think that I love being able to connect with people in that way.
Yeah, I think especially it gets a bad name. Say if the product is truly awful and you are only investing in marketing, the branding side, the sales
That's
side.
That's why we get the bad rep.
Yeah. Because then you're like, it's a false product. It looks amazing, but it doesn't deliver. And I suppose then you have a high turnover rate in customers. People don't come back. And you can make money from that, I guess. But that may be where it stems from. But you say you were making granola for a while before before you decided to start Cheeky Nibble. Was there a single day where you thought, okay, right, let's go for it? Or how did that materialize?
Well, originally I was making granola bars because obviously that's a more obvious snacking format. But because I was just making them for myself, I was being really lazy. Like I wasn't cutting them into perfect squares. I was just like breaking chunks off. So that's when I kind of saw like, oh, it's like snackable granola. And I don't know, I just kind of like, I think it's I'm so interested in the food industry. I'm interested in just researching industry trends in general. I looked into it and I saw that there was like this snackable granola, like big pieces kind of exist in America, but not really here. I don't know if there was one moment. I guess in some ways when I start, even though it wasn't a conscious, like I'm going to do this, when I knew I wanted to start a business and when I realized there might be potential in something I was already making, as soon as I started researching, the kind of decision had been made, whether it was subconscious, probably, but like, I started researching it and then I started thinking like, oh, if I added this, it would be even more unique. So for example, my granola was just like sweet. It was plain flavored. It was just like a sweet, crunchy oat bar. It was vegan and nut free because of allergens in my friends and family, but it wasn't gluten free. And I thought, let's add that because that would make it more people would be able to enjoy it. And I also noticed that like nostalgic dessert flavors were like a really popular trend. Like I wasn't making Banoffee pie granola for myself, like, but then when I saw that, like, oh, if I could make one of the things that would make this brand really unique is instead of being apple and raisin or cinnamon and all these like boring flavors that we have, I can make them fun flavors that are unique that we don't see on the market really. That would just be another selling point. So then I started experimenting with flavors, and once I started experimenting with flavors, it was a done deal because they tasted so good. I was like, I have to do it now.
It's good. I think it's a very sounds a very logical story, but I love the way you approached it. I mean, you mentioned that, so you said
bit of heart and a bit of head, bit of both.
That's the catchphrase from this episode. You did say, so you said researching the industry to see if there was a gap in the market and where else I can add USPs to build resilience in my brand's IP.
Yeah, I think, as a small business, for a long time, no one will notice you. So if you have a unique product, they won't steal your idea because you're not on their radar. But I mean, I very quickly, had, I won't name names, but big cereal brands buying my granola to their head offices. And, they haven't launched anything similar since. And I think it's because it's so difficult to make. I didn't realize like the handmade element of it obviously is not scalable for large businesses. Eventually, I hope to build a machine that can do some of it to make it more affordable. But ultimately, at the moment, that machine doesn't exist. The nut-free element of it, the fact that it has no may contain traces, it's really difficult to replicate. There are basically no sites other than one I work with that is a nut-free site in the UK as a bakery. So, making conscious decisions to make your business unique is not just about selling to customers and giving them a reason to convert from one product to yours by offering something different. It makes you more resilient to being copied. Like if you're just another brownie company or just another, I don't know, hot sauce company, there's nothing different about you. If you're doing anything fun like branding or a fun flavor, like if you're only doing fun flavors, someone else can copy your flavors that's bigger than you, and then you're kind of you've kind of ruined your domination of that market or your potential domination of that market. Obviously, the more uniqueness you have, the more niche you get, and then maybe you get quite niche. And I do think Cheeky Nibble is quite niche, but I think because I've combined niche allergens, which makes me quite resilient IP wise, with broad appeal of the flavors and the branding, I've kind of slightly protected my bases. Like most of my customers don't have allergies, actually. I have broad appeal. A lot of people just like Cheeky Nibble, but the fact that those customers that do have allergies buy my granola, they're very loyal, and I'm the only thing they can buy that's like me, so they come back.
I like the way you approached it because, you're taking all the different components that make up that product and you're making them unique so that it's very difficult to copy. If the big brands wanted to, the setup that you have is so specific that it isn't that replicable. I also think there's always that concern. I think you touched on it really well. Of if you're original in something and someone copies you, yes, that is quite bad. Even if you try and make it really unique, but at the end of the day, it's still your idea. You're the source of the idea, and they're just copying. So when you probably pivot because you had one idea, you'll have another good idea. Like the source is from you. You're the origination of that idea. So copiers are always going to be behind you in that respect.
Yeah, and I think also things can seem easy to replicate until you try it. Like when I thought, I'm not, this sounds really bad. I thought one of the reasons I really, when I decided to do granola, I thought this is going to be easy. I thought this will be so easy to scale. Like it's so easy for me to make this. I can make this granola recipe in like 20 minutes, and it takes like 20 minutes to bake. Like this will be so easy to scale. It took like weeks of me being at my bakery baking out like from 5 till 5 every day with the team to teach them how to make it. And I just had no idea how complicated it would be to scale up a recipe. It's just, even the simplest recipes, once you add in scales and different equipment, it's a whole new thing each time. And even different times of the year, the recipe needs to adapt because, for example, me, like the oats I buy, different seasons, they absorb moisture differently, and you have to adapt to that. Like it's so complicated. So yeah, even a big company, they'll see your product and be like, oh, we can replicate this. And then when they try, they go like, actually, this may be more hassle than it's worth. Let's see if Cheeky Nibble continues to grow, whether we really need to do this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm just going back to what you were saying at the beginning. I'm sort of thinking as you're speaking a bit, but yeah, that idea of just creating something, and it goes back to that first point, something so unique, or amending the components of that product so it is really difficult to replicate. I think they called it, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but building a moat, where it is going to take a long time or a lot of effort to get to where you are, and the bigger the moat, the more protected you are. And I think that's very summed up, very well from your first point. Going back to the branding though, were you very tempted to start with branding? What came first? Because you were baking granola beforehand, before even deciding to start Cheeky Nibble. How soon did the branding come after? Because as you've said, and I will certainly put a picture up on this episode, but the packaging is amazing. It's very, very unique. I feel like you've had a hand in it. But yeah, what came first, and how did you?
Chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the style of branding I wanted. As soon as I decided on the granola came first, because as soon as I decided I wanted it to be a food product, then I really wanted it to be nostalgic. If I decided to go fitness, I wouldn't have gone for the same branding. Or if I decided to go for a different type of product, as soon as I decided food and granola, I was like, this is something that needs to bring joy and comfort. So very quickly did the branding evolve. It was my first idea, if I'm very honest. It's like I loved cartoons growing up. It's all very personal. Like I loved cartoons. I particularly loved like anime illustration, a bit of manga. So I was like, I want it to be like retro, but with a slightly manga cartoony feel. And yeah, I was like hand drawing all the drawings. Like I have pencil drawings of like other flavors that I have developed but haven't launched. So yeah, then I was like drawing banoffee pies and stuff like that. So yeah, I came up with a whole box idea. I drew the whole box, a 360 of the boxes of in each flavor in pencil. I then really struggled to draw it digitally on Adobe Illustrator. So I went on Instagram and I spent like hours looking for an illustrator, like an illustrator, not a graphic designer, like an illustrator who drew in a similar style to me, but digitally. And then I found this guy in Mexico who I then DM'd and was like, can you redraw my drawings, but digitally? So I have a file of them to put on my boxes. Because I could do all the packaging on Adobe. Like I could do the ingredients list, everything like that. I didn't have an iPad. Like I couldn't draw the banoffee pie like I wanted it to. And my scanning was terrible. I couldn't scan it. And he did. I mean, I had to send him so much, like I had to call him and try and explain what a banoffee pie was. He had no idea what that is. Like he's Mexican, didn't really speak much English. He's amazing. He drew these beautiful drawings of like, he drew the bottle and all the bowls and all the flavors. And he sent that over. And I just put them on the boxes and that kind of was it. I spent most of my savings up front actually on getting them printed professionally in Suffolk. And yeah, the branding came very quickly. The name took a bit longer. So I actually had most of the box before I had the name. But yeah, I knew the style I wanted. I knew I wanted to be cartoony and retro very early on. It was my only idea, really.
No, I think, again, it's like that second lesson already is, do you think it was definitely the right approach to create something that you really wanted and you were going to value? Because I think often the temptation is to think about, well, what does everyone else want, and just focus externally. But I think in this example, very clearly, and it's obviously paid off so far, but you've created something that you really wanted and were focused on.
I think it's a good balance. Like I love cartoons. So, and not everyone does, but I was like, I love this. I think this is really beautiful. I think this is really cool. And yeah, I think that it had a bit of my heart in it, and I think people can feel that. And I think when you put a bit of your heart in something, and you're also playing on this idea of nostalgia and comfort and joy, it helps. Like I think there was a lot of. It was also just like the right time. I think it was slightly on trend, that style of like, I don't know. It's hard to say why. Like it sounds really strange, but it's the same with the name, Cheeky Nibble. Like I am quite a logical person. I did a lot of research. I didn't actually research much about branding trends. I did much more about flavors and food trends. The branding, I was just like, this is what I want the box to look like. And then I did it. And it's what I want the box to look like. It's what my dream cereal box would look like. So in some ways, like the product has a lot more thought and business decisions in it than the branding. The branding is all like gut instinct. I mean, my mum and I, like I said, I had to exercise a lot, hence why I was making the granola in the first place. And one of the things I do is I used to walk 15 kilometers every day. And my mum would sometimes join me on these walks because she doesn't like me walking around the countryside on my own because she thinks I'm going to be kidnapped. And she was the first person I told that I was thinking of starting a granola business. And we were brainstorming ideas, and I used to just say brand names for like hours, one after the other. And she'd be like, yeah, okay. And then like one day I said Cheeky Nibble, and we like never discussed it again. She was like, that's it, perfect. And we literally never spoke about another brand name again. It was like as soon as it came out my mouth, we both were like, that's it. And then we just moved on with our lives. I started Cheeky Nibble. But but yeah, it was like serendipity. I don't know, like as soon as I said it, it was like, that's what it's meant to be. And as soon as I imagined the branding of the boxes, it was like, that's what it's always meant to be.
Yeah, and you went through a process of chucking names out there, and some sounded okay, some didn't. So it's a bit like songwriting, isn't it? Where you have to just go through a number of different iterations, number of options, and eventually
When
you
it's
know
right,
when
we
the
know
right one
it.
hits.
Yeah. And also, I mean, my most recent branding is actually, I mean, it's the same branding, but I did a branding redesign with a graphic design agency called Episode 2. They're amazing if anyone wants a brand redesign. And they basically took my original drawings and my original branding and just elevated it. So the packaging is 10 times better than it used to be because of them.
Well, that's also the fun as well, like iterating, improving it 1%
Yeah,
every day,
sure.
or improving it as you go on. I mean, if you ended up with the ultimate product on day one, I think it'd be quite boring because there wouldn't be
I
far
think
to go.
I think I would be naive to think I was even close to a perfect product on day one.
Well, you got to enjoy the process.
Exactly.
But you mentioned you're quite meticulous. You do a lot of research. I think everyone thinks they do a lot of research, but I think you truly did. Do you mind just giving a bit an insight into how much research you did before you launched the product, and in what areas, and what did it look like practically? Were you just on your laptop every evening, just aggressively going in on certain target market?
Well,
How is there a gap? What did that look like?
I think it is. I mean, I'm autistic, so when I hyper focus on something, it's not like a normal level of interest. It's like 6 hours solid, not stopping to drink. Like my mum having to interrupt me and try and give me some water level of focus. So yeah, it was reading endless articles, going back to like 2016 to see whether these trends will recur. On food, on granola, on allergens, and looking into whether allergies were on the rise. Is this a growing market? Is this a growing need? Is granola on the ride? Is snacking on the ride? What are the competitor analysis? I have Excel spreadsheets, about 10, price analysis, box volume analysis, ingredients analysis, a whole analysis comparing fat content and sugar content and fiber content of the top 50 cereal granola brands in UK/Europe. Probably a level of research that you don't really need to do before you start a business. I don't want to put that off. It's just what my natural brain lent towards. Like I like to research and research and research. And I think also, and there is an element of needing reassurance for me. Like I'm not coming from an entrepreneurial family, much more traditional jobs. Wanting to start my own business was quite a rogue thing, especially having left a very well paid, good job in Germany to come back to the UK and then not look for work and then start my own business. Like I didn't need anyone's permission to do it. I was using my own money, but for my own sake, I don't have the confidence to do something just because I think it's a good idea. I needed to feel as sure as I could, and that weeks of hyper research made me feel sure, which gave me the confidence to do it. I don't think I would have had the confidence without the research. And if research gives you a confidence boost, do it.
It was certainly a superpower to be able to focus for that long. I think most people can't focus for about 5 minutes these days. I sometimes struggle,
Only when
especially
I'm
with your
interested.
phone. Well,
I can't sit through a film if that makes anyone different. I walked out of a cinema once because I got bored. So, it's only when I'm really interested in something.
You got to protect your time as much as possible. I think that's probably the best decision. You don't want to sit through a film that it's just like, this is rubbish.
I'm getting out of here. Yeah.
What film was it, just out of interest?
I don't know if I can say, because what happens if everyone loves it?
It's fine. Well, either way, I think it'll be...
Oh no, it was like one of the one of the oldest Pirates of the Caribbean films, like one of the later ones.
Yeah, but I think you're right on that. I think
it was
I'll probably
one,
get sick. Yeah.
There was no Keira Knightley. It was one of the older ones.
I think, yeah, you're on the right track. The first two were great, but it just went downhill.
Exactly.
They just wanted money afterwards. But you talk, just going back to something you just said. So you didn't tell anyone, or you didn't need anyone's permission to start Cheeky Nibble. And this links in nicely with what we spoke about before. So you said it doesn't need to be anyone's business. It's what's holding you back from starting your own business is what people will think. Then don't tell them. Just do it. And as you grow, they will come to you. remember the people who matter don't judge, and the people that judge don't matter.
Yeah. It's something I still need to tell myself because it's hard not to get anxious about what people think. But I think that what I find talking to other entrepreneurs, and a lot of people reach out to me wanting to start their own businesses, but they're like, oh, I'm worried. Like, I want to start my own fashion brand, but like, what will my friends from fashion college think? It's like, don't tell them. You don't need to announce it. It's no one's business. You don't need to like announce you're going to start a business. Just do it. If they're paying that much attention to you, they'll bring it up. And then you can tell them as much as you like. But, you know, if it's so impressive to even try to start a business. It's so hard, so like unbelievably hard and stressful. And it's not just stressful in terms of like the workload, like you're putting a lot on the line, like you're investing in your own future. And the only person that's going to make that happen is yourself. You're not relying on just like a team effort or a corporate effort or the company you work for being successful. Like it's just down to you. So the fact that you're even trying is commendable. And yeah, you really don't need to tell anyone. Like if people reach out to you, it's because you're growing big enough that they've noticed and you can tell them. And I think that most people who have reached out to me, I mean, I never announced it, I just did it. And most people who've reached out to me since, they think it's so lit, like, oh, it's so fun seeing it in shops. Like, I went to school with you. Like, I don't, you know, we didn't stay in touch, but then I don't think there's any ill will there. They're genuinely excited that someone they know has done something different. And if there is slightly judginess, I don't see why there would be. Like, they're not in your life, so who cares?
Yeah, I
the
think
people in your life will always be happy for you.
But as I was reading that out, because there's always the face value content, so it's all around just starting it. No one else will know. But really, at the heart of that is the fear of failure, and is the way I interpret it. Do you think that? Actually, I think one for yourself. Did you have a fear, or do you have a fear of failure still when you started the business? And do you think that's also a reason why a lot of people would rather just stick in the day job and look from afar via Instagram and see your product in the shops and then reach out rather than do it themselves? Because, you know, you are, as you just said, you're putting so much stuff on the line. Failure is quite a scary thing. So yeah, what's your take on that?
I think it's difficult for me to answer for like all entrepreneurs, because to be quite honest, like I'm young, which obviously has its own limitations as an entrepreneur and difficulties, but I don't have a family or a mortgage or any dependents. So the fear of failure is pure. You've got to realize, like for me, when I fear failure, it's purely ego. And so it's much easier for me to check myself and to, like confront that and, you know, try and grapple with that. If you're older and you're quitting your job, or you're taking on extra work and you're trying to have a family, the fear of failure isn't necessarily an ego thing. It's, you know, you're putting more on the line, there's more in jeopardy. So I don't feel like I can speak for everyone. I do think those people who still go ahead and run their own business are incredibly brave, and it's even more commendable in many ways. But for me, I did fear failure a lot. I still do. And actually, whilst it seems kind of silly, I try and tell myself, if it does fail, like if I have to close it because it's not selling anymore, whatever, I've learned so much. It's like, sorry, can I just pause for a second? I just have...
Yeah, go for it. How's the delivery?
It's fine. It's like I did a delivery, and normally they're like always in like 2 hours late, and it's the first time they're here early. Anyway, always the way. For me personally, with the fear of failure, I try and remind myself that I've learned so much. And even if the only thing I get out of Cheeky Nibble, if it does close or finish or anything like that, is the amount of experience I've had. Like, I'm really lucky that Cheeky Nibble has been recognized for awards. It's grown from my parents' kitchen to a bakery. You know, we're launching in a supermarket soon. Like, even if it does fail, like, this is an amazing learning experience. And I think I hope it would look good to any future employers if it did fail, that like I've done a lot by myself, and I've learned a lot of skills. So even if it is just that, that's amazing still. But I'm obviously lucky that all I have to think about is really how it reflects on me. But I also do get scared. I get scared that it's all up to me to create my own future. And actually, in all transparency, like that anxiety was really getting to me, especially when I stopped baking every day. Because then when I outsourced my own baking to a bakery, and I wasn't physically having to bake every box myself, and it was Cheeky Nibble was growing really quickly, and I was like, okay, I can't, it's too much stress thinking that this is like all on me now. I actually do work full time. So Cheeky Nibble is now a very exhausting second job or first job, and my other job is my second job. But I think it's a lot of people don't realize that I work 4 days a week for another company and 2 days a week for another company, and I work Cheeky Nibble every minute around that.
Yeah,
But
that's a very full on schedule, but clearly you're doing
it helps
balancing
me
it quite
immensely,
well.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I didn't have other jobs, I would think Cheeky Nibble goes, what do I have left? And now I'm like, if Cheeky Nibble ends, I have other stuff to do. There's other people that value me. And just like for my own mental health, even if I am slightly exhausted, being able to be valued for work that's completely unrelated to my business helps me immensely. So I don't recommend that for everyone, but if you are struggling with feeling like all your self-worth is wrapped up in your business, try and find outlets, whether it's volunteering or a hobby or something that you feel like you're being valued for something completely unrelated to your company.
Yeah, I, I think that's a very fair point, because if you just had Cheeky Nibble, the ups and downs also would be quite large. Whereas if that's the only thing you're doing, then a good week is great and then a bad week is awful. But you technically could have a not so great week with Cheeky Nibble, but something goes well in your other jobs, and so you get a win
Exactly.
there. So you're always like balancing it out, I suppose.
Post Dragon's Den, exactly. Like I've had lots of lows with Cheeky Nibble. Most people have been lovely, but I've had scary letters written to me.
Yeah.
I've had voicemails that are not pleasant. Some people have been quite negative about my neurodivergence. Like it's been quite difficult. And then being able to go to another job where people are happy to see me, I'm told I'm doing a good job, I'm getting great, reviews, and like it just is like, you know what, these negative things people are saying to me about Cheeky Nibble are not true, and it just reminds me of that because I get like more of a balance. So I think it's kind of a good like mental break. I'm also a bit of a workaholic, so I can't take a break by like taking a day off. Like it doesn't work. I need to stop working and work on something else to distract myself.
Do you think without the neurodivergence you would be in the position you are with Cheeky Nibble? Do you feel like it's a huge benefit for you starting that company?
I think so. I think definitely being self-funded and doing it all myself for a long time. I don't think many people would have the. I like repetition and process. So baking 100 boxes every day by hand, I didn't get bored. I found it quite therapeutic. So not many people could have done that for 2 years, I don't think. Not that every business owner needs to bake 100 boxes every day. But that, in my particular instance, was very helpful. My love of research, I think, meant that my first ever business and my first product to market was genuinely quite unique. And hence why it kind of grew very quickly, because I researched and made it that way. But I also think that, I do tend to, like, I see things quite black and white being autistic. And as soon as I like decided that this was a good idea, I had to do it. Like there was something that like I couldn't let it go. Like Cheeky Nibble was my special interest, my hyperfixation. So for better or for worse, this kind of like obsession with it, which I think is slightly neurodivergent, forced me to make it, because I was like, I can't not do this now. Like I can't describe it. Like I was like, I have to do this. It has to exist. Whether it's successful or not doesn't really matter. Like maybe that's why I'm more relaxed as well about failure. It's like I just needed Cheeky Nibble to exist in the world, for better or for worse. And it was just because I had this idea and I wanted it to come into existence. And I don't know if that's a neurodivergent thing, but that was my reality.
I think for what it's worth, Marietta, I think in the context of starting a business, it's an absolute advantage. There may be other parts of life where it's not, I don't know, but certainly having that fixation and borderline obsession with wanting to start it and
Granola.
nailing the research and nailing the design and the product. It has huge advantages. You look at some of the biggest businesses now, and one of the common themes throughout them is the obsession from the founder to want to make it great. But it's even like, I think the thing that gets overlooked the whole time, and obviously podcasts probably don't do a great job of this, but there's always the glitz and the great things that happen from companies, even companies like yourself. But it's always the underlying process that makes it great. So that the idea of baking 100 boxes a day and doing the solid work consistently day in, day out, I think is underrated. And people just look to the top line and where you are now, and the fact you're on Dragon's Den is that huge achievement. But you wouldn't have been there unless you were consistently there every day, turning up, just going at it.
I think it's quite easy to see businesses as a consumer from the end result. It's difficult because I don't want my customers to like know every single struggle I've had. It's not really on them, especially if my business is meant to be about bringing joy. I think with the Dragon's Den thing, I've had to kind of give them a glimpse that like it's been really difficult, and like I'm trying my best to get their products to them, but like it is just me, and it was just me until very recently baking every box. And so I had to give a little bit more context than I wanted to. I think I'm always torn because as much as I want to tell people the realities of running a business is hard, it's difficult because for me, it wasn't, the hardest part is not the turning up every day to work hard. Because I think most people who are entrepreneurs, that's like a given. They just like, they're hardworking. That's what they want to do. I think what is often not talked about enough, and it's maybe because mental health isn't talked about enough, is the mental load of running your own business. Like it's an all-consuming stress and pressure to succeed. And I don't think it's necessarily a fear of failure, but just so much to think about all the time. And it's just the mental load of having to make every decision yourself can be overwhelming. And it seems silly to talk about it because it's so easy. If I tell someone like, oh, I baked 100 boxes a day in a bakery I built myself in an old fire station with no insulation, it was -1 degrees. They're like, oh, that's so tough. I can imagine how tough that is. If I told you that I cried because I was stressed out because I got a delayed shipment of oats. So like, that's not that big a deal. Like it'll come the next day. But like, that's because I was just overwhelmed by everything else. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. But yeah, sometimes when you're talking about mental stresses, it's hard for people to understand. And, I talk to my friends who have normal 9-to-5 jobs and they talk about their work stress. And I do think it's very stressful. And I'm not trying to negate that, but it's also like, it's just different when at the end of the day, I can't take a holiday from my business and you can hand a hand over and go away for a week. Like there is someone that will pick it up. It's different. And it's hard to explain unless you do it.
Yeah. And also on a Friday afternoon, they can switch off from their job and come in on Monday and then start thinking about it. But they've got 2 days a week plus annual leave not to have a care in the world and be fairly confident they'll be paid the next month.
Yeah, exactly. Just knowing that you'll have an income the next month is a lovely novelty that I look forward to. Yeah.
Although, there's always I think that's what some people, most people don't have their own business. I mean, that's the upside. But then on the other side is you're probably not working in your passion most of the time. Some people do, but most of the time it's not something you absolutely love. So there's a balance to be had. I was speaking to my colleague at work, I won't name him, but I was speaking to my colleague at work today about stress because we've had quite a full-on day.
Yeah.
Won't go into the details unless they're listening. But we were saying, actually, it's not really that stressful, is it? I mean, it feels like it is, but at the end of the day, it's a job that you go home and you get paid for, and the weekend you have off. Like, it's not really, it's an office job. So
I think things are stressful, but also I think even just having a colleague to talk about it, you have a soldier in arms.
Yeah.
I think I'm so jealous of other entrepreneurs that have co-founders. I'm like, you have someone to like bounce ideas off and make decisions with. Like, yeah, I think doing anything in a vacuum on your own is overwhelming. If I could click click my fingers and wish that I had started this with someone else, I would have. And I'm not saying that there's not issues with having co-founders, because I'm sure you'll butt heads, but normally collaboration is always a good thing. So just being able to talk to your colleagues at your stress probably helped.
Yeah, if I look over the some of the key points made over previous episodes, a lot of the time having a co-founder comes up as one of the benefits. Do you think, so there's, I think, two questions here. Would you consider ever having a co-founder now? And then going back to the point that you started Cheeky Nibble, was the fact that you didn't have a co-founder an active decision, or just the fact that you just naturally started off on your own and you never really thought about it in that way?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. It just was going to always be the reality. I lived in a rural village in Norfolk. No one was going to do this with me. So my parents don't cook. They reheat microwave meals, so they definitely were not going to help me in this venture in that sense. There just wasn't an option for a co-founder. And then in terms of having a co-founder now, I mean, I would love to hire someone and give them a proper title and give them autonomy over sections of the business. I think it would be difficult to have a co-founder that did everything like I do everything, just because, not to sound hugely egotistical, but the reality is I have done a lot in the last 3 years, and if we're making a decision, I'm always going to have more say, I feel. And bringing someone on as an equal co-founder now is just probably not realistic, because I've done too much already. That I always say but it's my business. It's never going to be someone else's business. But I think I would love to bring someone on that in areas that I'm bad at, because I respect people that know more than me, because I know very little in reality. So, bringing someone on to take over finance, operations, or marketing fully, and I would respect that they have much more experience and knowledge in it. And I might have opinions, but I probably would more likely let them run with it, because I'm I'm in charge of the business, the brand, but here's a section that you're in charge of. That's probably, and I would, I could do it for equity or something like that, so they would be part of the business. But I think an equal co-founder is probably unrealistic this far down the line, just in terms of how much work I've put into it now.
Yeah, I mean, as you scale, it may make sense to have someone on board, especially in the areas that you just described, that you may feel like it's not your natural strength. I mean,
hiring every single person and then me doing absolutely nothing, because it's all my
just sort of hire yourself out of the company, and then you can.
I'll just sit back, see where it goes.
Just get your own board, scale up, all this sort of stuff. Yeah,
my dream.
You've already just started another brand and then be in the same position. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Make another rod for my own back.
But you get to the point where you've started creating the granola, you've created the packaging, clearly a cathartic process. You've put your heart and soul into that. The design looks so good, by the way. But obviously that's one side of the coin. You need people to be able to buy it. And you said this is one of the strategies you've used in the first 100 days that helped you out. So you said reaching out to influencers to drive customer sales. Don't be put off by the lack of followers, as you can market yourself as a new business. But do not reach out until you have a nice grid of photos, even if it means posting 10 pics or reels in one day.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I knew I to get word out there. I was quite confident in my branding and my product being unique enough that even big influencers were like, oh, I've never seen anything like this before. I want to try it for free. If it's gifted, I'll try it for free. Because having a unique product that looked good really helped. I think I see big brands. I think because I was really interested in the food industry, I'd seen big brands launch, with big investment backing, and they had 200 followers or 50 followers or something like that. But they launched a day ago, so they weren't going to have a lot of followers. So I don't think follower count matters as much as you think it does in terms of reaching out to influencers. You put brand new, you say you're a brand new brand, you just launched, they won't care. But I do think you need to look legit. So having a website linked, having a good grid of photos that look professional, that show the product, show the branding, that looks like a professional grid, not like your own Instagram, unless you're someone that has a really aesthetic Instagram, then like your own Instagram. But yeah, just make it look as professional as possible. And when you reach, I reached out to people, and they all said yes. And I think don't just reach out with a generic template. I reached out to food influencers who I had actually watched their YouTube channel for years. I was like, oh, I know you love cherry Bakewell because you're always making it with your dad. Can I send you my cherry Bakewell granola? Like, I would love for you to try it. Let me know if you think it tastes like it. So if you write something personal, you show that you care about what they're putting out in the world, then they probably will try what you're putting out in the world as well. Because I honestly find like everyone I've spoken to who's like an influencer have been lovely. Maybe it's foodies are nicer than maybe fashion influencers, but in general, very welcoming and very kind and incredibly supportive. But also, if you're, I didn't because I happen to be obsessed with like food YouTubers. But you can also fake it. Like you could just watch a couple of videos and pick up some gems. Try and reach out to them. I'm sure you can fake it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I've been watching you for years and just wanted to reach out.
For years.
Yeah.
This last episode you've posted, I don't know.
Yeah. I've watched you for 10 years, but it just so happens the thing I'm referencing is the latest video that you've put out just by chance. and did it pay off? So you've reached out to these food influencers. I do think, going back to the beginning, the branding is so helpful because, as you said, it's like it is Instagrammable. The packaging is very aesthetic.
You want them to, like, when they receive it, to want to post about it. Yeah. You know, sending them. If I sent them a bag of granola in a brown bag with a bit of twine around the top, that look like whilst it could have been delicious, they're not going to put it on their YouTube channel necessarily. They wanted to show the box off because it looked cute, and they wanted to take a picture, I think, because it looked cute, which helped.
And then that in collaboration with your message and the very personal message, I think clearly worked. But moving on from that, do you feel like that helped in terms of sales? So what did they do in real terms? Did they post about it on their story and tag you in it? And then did you see followers come from that? And then did you see sales come from that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so funny because like I did see sales. And I definitely saw sales if I gave them like a discount code. And these were like just funny because like compared to my sales now, like these are like not very many sales. But when you got something from like 0 sales, you know, I was in my parents' kitchen. I expected to have 0 sales. And I was like, if I get 1 sale this week, I'd be amazed. I reached out to some influencers and I got like 20, 30 orders in a week, which I was like over the moon by. Couldn't believe it. Because these are strangers buying my granola that I'm making in my parents' broken oven. I had to turn the tray around every like 5 minutes because otherwise it would burn. So I just couldn't believe it. So it definitely helped. And then having some sales and being on some influencers, I then reached out to stockists and shops. And because I was like, oh, I was on so-and-so's YouTube channel, like I'm a new business, do you guys want to stock me? And I think again, because the branding looked professional, they said yes. So I kind of boosted my production was a bit of online sales, but actually for the last 2 years, it's been 70% wholesale because if you're on your own, it's easier to just have one conversation with one shop than try and reach out to hundreds of individual online customers in terms of like investment of your energy, especially if you're just selling cereal, which is something people tend to buy in shops more than online. So yeah, I think that it helped with online sales, but also it helped with cementing a brand presence that I could refer to when I reached out to shops. I mean, a very large chain of delis in London took me on when I was still baking in my parents' kitchen, which I don't think they knew at the time. I had a 5-star hygiene rating, but I think if they realized it was just me baking in my parents' kitchen, they might have said no. But because my boxes had like all the like legal labeling, I looked really professional. And I think actually my job in Germany, I created packaging for cosmetics. I knew that there were certain legal requirements to package products that you had to do. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They start a business, they don't realize they have to have like their company address on there. They have to have like a nutritional information created. And I had all that from the get-go. So I just looked shelf ready, like retail ready from the get-go, which, massively helped.
Yeah, it's a really smart way of doing
like the fun branding, like the actual necessary parts of the packaging, I think helped with the stores.
Yeah, the perception's everything, isn't it? Especially the small things that make you look like you've been stocked elsewhere, like the smaller labels and the regulatory bits. Yeah, certainly. Even if it isn't conscious, like subconsciously, they're thinking, "Oh, well, this is clearly a legit brand," and it
Yeah.
goes back to it goes right back to the beginning of your love of branding, but also some of the points you've raised, even about having a social media that looks professional. So I think definitely there's been lots of really, really good bits of this, but I think one of the key takeaways, or probably the takeaway from this, is around being branding professional, making sure you have a product, okay, that's obviously good, but that just looks like something people would want to share and take seriously and be impressed by, and is original, and is something that you just really wanted to make.
Yeah, I think you're doing yourself and your business a disservice if you don't invest in branding and looking professional from the get-go. It's going to save you so much time. Like obviously my branding's evolved since then, but it was fairly professional from the get-go. And it just meant that like I was never told, like the one thing I never heard was like, I was never told, oh, your packaging's not right, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like it was always ready to go as soon as I wanted to. And yeah, and it was always like, we love your branding. There was never like, oh, we're not sure. Like we already have a cereal company. We already have a granola brand. Like a lot of these stores already had granola brands, but mine looked so different that they were like, we're willing to give it a go because our customers will be drawn to it because it looks different.
And there's a good story around it as well, because that's the surface level perception, but beneath it is that theme of nostalgia and bringing people back to their childhood, and that absolutely reflects in the packaging, but also the flavors and the type of product.
I mean, a lot of the shops who stocked me early on, they were like, yeah, we'll stock you. And I was like, oh, let me send you samples. And they were like, okay, yeah, sure, send us samples. They didn't ask for them necessarily always. And I sent them samples and they were like, oh, it tastes really good. It's like, we were going to stock it because it looked good. Like it actually tastes great. Amazing. I mean, some shops are a bit more discerning than others, but a lot of them were pleasantly surprised that it was like a tasty product.
Yeah, like double win. We weren't even expecting it to be great, but it is. So,
exactly.
Wins all around. Is there any perceptions you had before you started Cheeky Nibble about what it would be like to start a business that turned out not to be true? And then the opposite question, is there anything that you didn't anticipate that right at the beginning, say the first 100 days, you were really shocked by, and you were like, oh, I did not anticipate this at all?
I know it sounds really naive, but like, I think it goes back to what I said about, I really started Cheeky Nibble because I wanted it to exist. It sounds silly for someone that does so much research and loves branding and is quite business minded in some ways, that I was so motivated to just make the brand, that I didn't really think about whether it should be successful or not. Like, I don't know. It's like I'm very continually surprised that people buy it, and I don't know why, because I worked really hard to make it desirable. But I think I was surprised in the first 100 days that anyone wanted to buy it, because my motivation wasn't to make something that sells loads, even though obviously I need it to sell and I need it to grow and be a good business. But my motivation was just to make it be. So that was a really nice surprise and is encouraging. So I think I wasn't expecting that in a naive way. I just kind of like wanted it to exist and hoped it sold. And then when it sold, I like slightly couldn't believe it. And then something I thought I would be better at that I don't think I'm great at is I always saw myself as like loving to problem solve, wanting a challenge, and I do enjoy that. But yeah, no, I would like less problems. So I don't know, that sounds so obvious, but yeah, I think it goes back to maybe just having the mental load all on yourself. I think I was naive. I'm someone that's quite independent. I like to work hard. I'm very self-motivated. And I think I was naive to how much I really wish I didn't have to do this all by myself, and how much I really wish that I hadn't started alone. I've come to appreciate, I've always liked collaborating and working with other people in my other jobs, but I think I didn't realize how much I valued just bouncing ideas of someone else. And actually meeting other founders has been one of the biggest blessings of starting a business. It's like you get this like secret club that you get to suddenly reach out to other entrepreneurs and other founders. You probably find this, and like they're just some of the most inspiring, amazing people to talk to and bounce ideas off. And like we just voice note each other, we share our worries, we give tips. And yeah, that's been an amazing blessing. I didn't anticipate, and I didn't think I would value it as much. I think maybe my ego or something, I don't know. Like I'm so grateful that I have even other founders to talk to. And I think I would have ideally had a co-founder if I could go back and, I don't know, wish up one who happened to be my neighbor in my village or something.
But no, I completely get that, because no one else has gone through the same experience unless they're another founder. It's a very unique set of circumstances that you're in. And so obviously your friends you can speak to, and there's some level of empathy that they can give, but they haven't gone through the exact same process as you. So to reach out to other founders maybe in the same area, that's certainly extremely helpful, because they can relate a lot more. And so that must be very helpful.
Yeah, I think I was very surprised how lonely it would be and how isolating it can feel, just because like you do it because you want to create something and you don't realize that you're basically creating a life for yourself where very few people will understand what it feels like to do your job or to live the way you live. And that can be quite isolating, especially when you're stressed out. So yeah, connecting with other founders has been a big surprise and a big blessing.
Yeah, it's like proxy co-founder in a way. It's not quite the real thing, but at least you have the forum and space to bounce ideas off other people. And I think just going back to one thing struck me, because when you were saying that you were getting one sale a week and then you reached out to influencers and the sales picked up. But I don't know if this is true, but I felt it with the podcast sometimes that I think when I got my first 3 guests or 6, or even like first guest, I was absolutely buzzing. And then now you get, say, you have 10 more episodes and you feel just as happy. I'm sort of stealing this from another podcast. I think a guy called James Smith said it. He's like a fitness influencer. But,
I know him. I listen to his podcast too.
Yeah, he's quite controversial, but I quite like him. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I pick the ones with interesting topics. I pick and choose which ones I listen to.
But he said that all wins feel the same, and I actually agree with that. And I think what he means is that even if you have one sale a week, I think that the first sale is really exciting and you get the same level of buzz as you do from, say, if it ramps up to 20 and then it ramps up to 40 and 80.
Well, it's all relative as well. The first sale is hardest, and I think I always tell myself, it's always going back to when would I, if it was going to fail, when would I give up Cheeky Nibble, or when would you give up on a business? Let's say taking out financial need to give up a business, and let's say taking out the financial decision making of staying with a business or giving it up. For me, if I see continual growth, and it's fine if a week or two there's no growth, but if I have something in a week, a month, or 6 months time to look forward to, whether it's a new stockist launch, a podcast, an award, an event, a fair, something, a market, a pop-up, there's something in the horizon that I'm working towards is growing my business even in a tiny amount or in a big amount. That's a win. That's a reason to keep going for me. Beyond, obviously there's financial stuff, but as long as I feel like there's growth and there's still potential, that keeps me in the game. And so when it's a first sale, or it's the 100th sale, or it's the 20,000th sale, or whatever it is, as long as it's another one, it's like a little hamster wheel, but it keeps you going and it keeps the motivation. And yeah, I think that's quite good. Every win is a win, I think, for a founder.
Yeah, I think especially as humans, if we're driving forward and there's progression, that's all you need. You just need to feel like you're moving in some direction and you're not stuck. I'm very
much the person that will if there's a traffic jam, I will drive along country roads just to feel like I'm getting there still. I'm not sitting in traffic. So I think that sums up my business motivation as well.
I think that's probably a product of growing up in the countryside as well. Different laws out there.
I'm going to drive through a field as long as I'm moving.
just don't annoy the farmer. Is there anything I haven't asked, or is there anything that you'd like to say at the end of the podcast that we haven't mentioned yet?
I don't know. I think one thing I did think about, obviously, I mentioned that like scaling up was quite difficult in reality. Like it was more complicated teaching people the recipe than it was before. But long and like my product is expensive for a granola because it's expensive to make for a granola, but that's because it's mainly handmade. But there is potential when I have the money to invest in a machinery which would reduce my labor costs. When I know it's a bit cliche to always think like, oh, you need to look at the cost, it's about the cost, but fundamentally, my granola, and I knew this from the very beginning, should not be that expensive to make in terms of ingredients. And it's just labor that's expensive. And that's something that eventually, if I continue to grow, I can resolve. If you're making something which from the get go is always going to be really expensive to make, it's not a deal breaker, but you're going to have to rely so much more on like it being an exceptionally good product and an exceptionally good branding and marketing to capture a market majority. Like at the moment, one of my biggest drawbacks is that I'm slightly expensive, but that's something that hopefully I can change in the future. So yeah, I know because I see some people starting businesses and they're like, one of their USPs is that it's like got some unique ingredient that, you know, one supply chain issue and they're screwed basically, or like it's super expensive. It's like, you know, just it's great to have unique selling points, but don't make your life so difficult for yourself by creating a product that is always going to be really difficult to make. Like mine, even I'm like, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. Like I've made myself top 14 allergen free, and that's kind of made my life very difficult because I have one bakery in the UK that is a nut free site. So in terms of, you know, potential manufacturing sites, I'm limited to one, which is a huge constraint, obviously on a business and on production capacity. But being allergen free is a core principle to my business. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if you're starting a business, choose the hills you want to die on and choose the ones that will make your life easier. Even if it's not easier right now, it'll be easier down the road. Just think long term when you're coming to building a product a bit. Like imagine if it is successful, what will it be like?
Marietta, thanks so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, I hope I didn't ramble too much. I'm sorry for all the interruptions.
No, I think it actually helped. It like relaxes the mood.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you, Marietta, for your time. I thought that was, I really enjoyed that one. And I have no doubt that your product will do really well. It is unique. I think your packaging is unique. I don't see any luxury granola brand in the market quite like yours. I do think it stands out. So I'll be willing you on as the months and years go on. So best of luck and please stay in touch. So I think next week, I don't think this is episode 7 next week now. Let me have to check this again. One sec. Yes. There's a company that I have been trying their products for probably about four years or so now. It's very strange actually speaking with the founder, just given that their brand is quite well known. So I will leave it there, but I will see you guys next week. See ya later.